So I burned down my elementary school. Not to hurt anyone, or kill anyone. Not out of protest or because I hated my school. I burned it down because I had to. While I always struggled to get my math homework done, I never minded my science homework. Both subjects were handled by Mr. McKendrick. It always seemed like math time lasted twice as long as science did. In point of fact, math did take slightly longer to do than science, except for on Friday. Friday was our lab day, when we got to do experiments, and while most of the students hated the lab sheets that came with the experiments, to me, they were worth the results. So spring break was right around the corner and we just started a section on solids, liquids, and gases. The first Friday's experiment was actually pretty lame. To see that solids are denser than liquids, we did an experiment with ice and water in one cup and water in another, both filled to the top. When the ice melted, the cup overflowed. Yay. But the second Friday, we made Oobleck. Oobleck is a mixture of 2 parts cornstarch and 3 to 4 parts of water, often with food coloring mixed in, usually green. It's used to teach kids about non-Newtonian fluids. A non-Newtonian fluid is a fluid whose flow properties differ in any way from a Newtonian fluid. Most commonly, the viscosity of non-Newtonian fluids is dependent on shear rate or shear rate history. In short, if you apply pressure to Oobleck, it becomes like a solid. But at rest, it melts into a liquid-like state. This experiment will blow your 9-year-old mind. Mr. McKendrick hammered the stuff. It hardened to the blow. He sliced it, and it healed immediately. We mixed like 10 turkey trays of the stuff up with various colors mixed in. But my lab group opted to do an extra experiment. Mr. McKendrick had an experiment plan that he hadn't tested yet. It meant that we didn't get to put food coloring in our Oobleck, but that we got to play with and eat mints. We got your typical red and white peppermints and dropped them into the tray. Now allegedly, the peppermints would melt and yield both a pleasant peppermint smell and a trippy peppermint pattern in the Oobleck. However, the experiment was a bust. Others in my group were upset, but Mr. McKendrick taught me that failure was a possibility in any experiment. I really took that lesson to heart, while others didn't. But I wanted to play with the substance some more. So I volunteered to clean out the trays while everyone else watched a movie in Mr. McKendrick's room. 4 doors down, in Mrs. Morgansky's room, the only room on that side of the school with a sink, I washed out the trays by myself. Except for mine. I hid it where I could take it out and play with it when I returned. My heart was in my throat the whole time, but I managed to get it to a hiding spot in a loose grate in the side of the school. I had a lingering guilt about doing something I was hiding from my teacher, but it went away in a day or so, into spring break. At lunch, the Monday I returned, a friend in Mrs. Morgansky's class mentioned that the room smelled like sugar cookies, the kind you eat at Christmas, Later, walking by the room, I smelled it as well. It had an almost caramel smell to it, like sugar melted in water. Over the course of a week, the smell started to make its way out of the single room and waft into the hall by the room. By the second week after spring break, the smell made its way into the neighboring rooms. Everyone made a guess as to what the smell was, where it was coming from, what exactly it was, when another mystery arose. A sound coming from Mrs. Morgansky's room. At home, I convinced my parents to make Oobleck, and they'd never actually seen anything like it before. They had just as much fun with it as me. When the fun was over, my mother put the bowl of Oobleck in the fridge. I asked why, and she said, so it doesn't get moldy, of course. It didn't dawn on me immediately. But soon, I realized a mold was growing inside the school. A sweet-smelling mold in the vent system. and the air ducts. And that guilt from before returned, but stronger, growing like the mold. When I realized that, the mold smell had reached Mr. McKendrick's room, I was feeling sick. I felt like everyone knew. Like Mr. McKendrick would punish me at any moment for creating such a substance, for being so dumb, for hiding a secret. I made myself a victim. For my safety and my sanity, it was a survival strategy, a cowardly one. I didn't know I was faking it at the time, but I felt ill from the mold. I asked to go to the nurse's office because I was feeling bad. I didn't describe how I was feeling. I was just feeling bad. As it happened, the nurse's office was beside Mrs. Morgansky's room. I sat in the nurse's office, next to a child who had just thrown up prior to my arrival and was now violently coughing. I heard the sound from before, coming from the vents. At that point, I had two options. Come clean